Welcome back to our new session, everyone. In our previous session, we learned how to manage the payroll manually in QuickBooks Online. In this session, we're exploring two vital tools used for time-based billing. The single time activity tool in QuickBooks Online helps when an employee works on a job for a customer and gets paid based on the hours they work. This feature lets you keep track of the time each employee spends on a client's project. It's really useful for businesses that charge their clients by the hour, like consulting or service businesses. When you use this tool, you can easily show your clients how many hours were worked and make sure employees get paid right for their time. It's a good way to keep everything clear and fair for both the business and the clients. Let's look at an example. Suppose one of our employees, let's say Joe Adams, has worked for the General Electric Mart while providing the consultation service on 15th January. It was agreed that General Electric Mart would make the payment based on the total hours worked for them at $25 per hour. So let's record it in a single time activity. Let's start with setting the date to January 15th, 2024. We are recording information for our employee, Joe Adams. In the customer field, choose General Electric Mart because that's who Joe worked for. Now, in the service field, we don't have an option for consultation service. So we need to create it. Let's make a new service called consultation service and categorize this under sale of service income. Since Joe's payment is based on the hours he worked, tick the billable per hour option and set the rate at $25 per hour. For the work hours, Joe started at 9 a.m. and ended at 6 p.m., but he took a 1 hour break. This means he worked for a total of 8 hours. In the description, write, consultation service provided billed on an hourly basis to explain the work done and how it's charged. To summarize, Joe Adams worked 8 hours at $25 per hour, totaling $200 for the day. With all the details correctly entered, we're now ready to save the form. Once saved, QuickBooks Online automatically saves it in the list of sales transactions. If we visit the list of sales transactions, we can see the time charge we just recorded. We have an option to convert this time charge into an invoice as the work is completed, and now the client is liable to pay the fee. We can add the payment terms as net 60 days and update the invoice date as 15th January 2024. Since we're dealing with service income, sales tax doesn't apply. So we'll choose the option out of scope of tax for this invoice. However, it's important to remember that tax rules can change depending on where you are. So always make sure to check your local tax laws. On the invoice, we'll include the note, consultation service provided billed on hourly basis to describe what the charge is for. After reviewing everything and ensuring it's correct, we go ahead and save the invoice. Now, if we look in our list of sales transactions, we'll see the new invoice we just created. Now let's move on to another important tool, weekly timesheet. The weekly timesheet feature expands on the capabilities of the single time activity by letting you keep track of all the hours an employee works in a week, which has to be billed to the clients. It's great for businesses where employees work on various tasks or projects during the same week. Again, let's look at an example with our employee, Andrea Smith, who worked for 2 different clients during the week of January 8th to January 12th. Andrea spent 2 days working at General Electric Mart, offering consultation services, and 3 days at Infosys BizHub, helping to set up electrical appliances. Both clients have agreed to pay based on the total hours worked at a rate of $22 per hour. Now, we need to add this information to the weekly timesheet. We are creating a weekly timesheet for Andrea Smith. So let's choose Andrea Smith for this. Since we're focusing on the second week of January, let's select the range 2024-11 to 2024-17. Now let's fill in the time details. Andrea's first client was General Electric Mart. For the service, we'll pick consultation service. The description can be consultation for 2 days billed hourly. Since the payment is based on the hours worked, we'll tick the billable per hour option and set the rate at $22 per hour. Andrea worked 8 hours on both Monday and Tuesday for this client. So let's add that to the time sheet. The sheet will automatically calculate the total as 16 hours and the billable amount as $352. Moving to the next step. We choose Infosys BizHub as the client. For the type of work, we select installation service. So we describe the work as installation guidance for 3 days billed at an hourly rate. Make sure to tick the billable per hour option and set the hourly rate at $22. This results in a total of 24 hours worked with a billing amount of $528. After checking that all details are correct, we can save this entry. When you save a weekly timesheet in QuickBooks Online, it splits the timesheet into separate time activities for each day an employee worked and for each customer they worked for. This means if an employee works on different tasks for multiple customers throughout the week, QuickBooks organizes these tasks by day and by customer. If we visit the list of sales transactions, we can see the system has automatically divided the weekly timesheet into 5 distinct time activities for each day worked. Now, we have an option to individually convert each timesheet entry into an invoice. During this process, remember to update the credit terms, set the invoice date, add a description, and mark the tax status as out of scope of tax. The transaction is the sale of service transaction. So we have already seen how that affects the financial statements before. In the profit and loss account, when we turn each timesheet into an invoice, we see an increase in the sale of service income section. On the balance sheet, there's a rise in accounts receivable under assets and an equal increase in net income on the credit side. That wraps up our chapter on payroll management in QuickBooks Online, where we learned how to prepare a payroll sheet and handle payroll manually in QuickBooks Online. We've also explored 2 essential tools for monitoring the time employees spend on specific tasks or projects. Moving ahead, we will delve into the details of managing banking transactions in QuickBooks. I'll make sure to review what we've learned today before moving forward.